What does the league as a whole think about the current Seattle Seahawks roster? What's going on, everybody? Good morning. We have made it to Friday, and we have also made it to the end of one of ESPN's annual series. And I wanted to go ahead and take a look at what they put together here. Now, you guys might remember that ESPN did this last year, and last year I decided to actually make a video for each article. But this year I decided to just let everything come out, and then we'll just cover everything that they did in one video. I decided to do my prediction series a little bit earlier, and I think that you can recap everything in this article that we as Seahawks fans care about in one video anyway. So what they do is they poll NFL executives, they poll NFL coaches, they poll NFL scouts, and ask them to list out what they think are the best players at each position. And then they put all of that data into some kind of aggregate to rank who the consensus best players at each position are. So I don't know exactly what kind of formula they use, but I think you guys can kind of follow along with that. It's a pretty simple idea. Presumably each executive coach or scout gives a top 10 list, and then the ESPN, the writers, put all that information together. I think this is Jeremy Fowler. And you end up with an aggregated top 10 list along with some honorable mentions. So it gives an opportunity to see what the general consensus is on a team's roster. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be correct on everything, but it's at least interesting to get an idea of what the perception of your team is going into the season. So, they did things in a little bit of a weird order this year. I think last year they actually did go in a way that made sense. This year they just kind of picked random positions one by one and posted the article each day over the last 2 weeks or so. So they started with running back, and then I think the next position they did was defensive tackle. So we'll just go in the order that they did, and we'll check to see if there's any Seahawks representation on any of the lists. Now, of course, there is at least some, but the question is how much, and the answer is not a heck of a lot. This running back list, top 10 running backs for 2024, there is actually the appearance of a Seahawk, but you got to scroll all the way to the bottom, past McCaffrey, Hall, Chubb, Barkley, Taylor, Bijan, Josh Jacobs. Okay, it's like, I'm not against any of this. But you get through the top 10, still nothing. You get down to honorable mentions. You've got Aaron Jones. Okay, now we're talking. We got Ken Walker here. Kenneth Walker III of the Seattle Seahawks is an honorable mention. So, assuming the honorable mentions are in some kind of order, I guess you could say he ranks 12th, I guess you could say. So, I don't have a big objection to that. I will say that I think it's a little bit weird that Breece Hall is so much higher, because those two guys are kind of inexorably linked. And I remember going into that draft, I did think Hall was a little bit of a better player, but then Hall tore his ACL, and then I'm just thinking about what Walker's done over the last, well, you could really say 2 years, but maybe you just want to take the last year behind a really bad offensive line, doing the things that he's doing. I don't know. There's something about that seems a little bit off to me, but I don't know if I consider Walker to be a top 10 running back. I think he is close, which is what is reflected here, and I think that he definitely has the ability to be a top 10 running back. He just has to do it. And part of doing it is getting an offensive line that will be able to support him appropriately. I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm not saying it's anything wrong that he's doing. But I do think that Ken Walker, looking at his talent, looking at what he can do, should be able to be a top 10 running back in this league at some point. So you can scroll through a little bit more here. There isn't another Seahawk, of course. You wouldn't expect there to be two running backs on one team. Quite a few running backs get votes, but yeah, Ken Walker, honorable mention. All right, so next we have defensive tackles, interior defensive linemen. So let's go through here. We got Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Jeffrey Simmons, Madu Bouquet from Baltimore, McDonald's old buddy, Christian Wilkins, Derek Brown, DeForest Buckner, Kenny Clark, Javon Hargrave. So nothing in the top 10. However, honorable mentions, Vita Vey, Jonathan Allen, Jalen Carter, Deron Payne, Cameron Hayward, and Christian Barmore, so nothing there. However, you get down to the area at the bottom here where they list out some players that received some votes, and I know that's not exactly a high bar to clear, but it is a bar that you have to clear. Leonard Williams and Draymond Jones are both listed here. So we do have some representation here. It's not great, but it's something. And honestly, Draymond Jones should be fortunate that he got any votes at all because he didn't play that well last year, and he has a very bad reputation right now among, honestly, I kind of feel like even Seahawks fans don't really like that guy at the moment. Now, Leonard Williams, I could go either way on this. Like, do I think that he's a top 10 defensive tackle in this league? Not anymore. Do I think that he's a top 15 one? Maybe. Margins are really thin down here anyway. So, yeah, seems about right to me. I can't argue with it too much. Maybe if I really wanted to do a super intensive deep dive, I could say, hey, Leonard Williams is still a better player than Jonathan Allen or something. Maybe I think he's a better player than this Cameron Hayward. I don't know. But once you get down here, things blend together so well. It doesn't really matter that much. The point is the representation. All right, next position will be edge rusher. And, I mean, I've made a couple videos already this offseason talking about how the Seahawks do not have star power here. They don't have a superstar pass rusher. They don't even really have a star pass rusher. And sure enough, there's no Seahawks in the top 10. There's no Seahawks in the honorable mentions. And there's no Seahawks in the receiving votes category. I do think that Nwosu would have received votes if he did not get hurt last year. If he played the whole season healthy and produced the way he produced in 2022, he'd be at least there. But he didn't, and I think Boye Mafe can get there this year, but he's going to have to actually do it. So, yeah, this is the way we built out our current edge rusher crop. It's a collection of good players, and there's not any one overpowering presence here. Okay, now we go to safeties, and there was a time where the Seahawks would have had representation on this list, even if it just kind of felt like token representation. Like, I think there was still a sense among the voters in this series that a guy like Quandre Diggs and even a guy like Jamal Adams deserved credit because they were so highly paid and they were so high profile, even if their play on the field may or may not have warranted it. But now we don't have those guys. We have Rayshon Jenkins and we have Julian Love. And I don't think I need to tell you guys this. Neither guy made the top 10. I certainly wouldn't expect either guy to make the top 10 based on their play in their career so far. Buda Baker, our UW guy, is here, however, at number 6, so we got that going for us, I guess. But, yeah, not in the top 10. We don't see them in the honorable mentions either. And we do not see them in the receiving vote category, so no safeties for the Seahawks this year. And, again, I don't think anybody's terribly surprised by that, but, yeah, that's what happens when you clean house. It's good to clean house. Sometimes you need a clean house, and we definitely needed to, but you're left with this. Okay, next position, we have tight ends. So, obviously, top 10, that's not going to happen, right? I think we all know that. Maybe Noah Fant has top 10 talent, but Noah Fant hasn't produced anywhere near like a top 10 tight end over the last a couple of years. And he's obviously the only guy who you could even consider putting here. You got Kittle, Andrews, Laporta, Hawkinson, some good tight ends in this league right now, by the way. Although it does feel like there's a little bit of a cliff after the top 5. But then you get down to the honorable mentions. Okay, you got some pretty decent guys. And still no Noah Fant. But you get down to the receiving votes area, and Noah Fant checks in, which seems about right to me. Remember, Noah Fant's not a very good blocker. So you had the top 10, and then you have 3, 4, 5. So they put Noah Fant at 16th. So the implication is that he is the 16th best tight end in football, which would make him a dead average starter. Seems about right to me. Now, he can definitely be better than that, and I think he'll need to be better than that based on the contract we gave him. But this feels about right. Okay, so there is a little bit of Seahawks love here, but not a lot. Just receiving vote, not even an honorable mention. All right, interior offensive lineman. This is another easy one. I don't think there's anybody on the Seahawks right now who could even consider ending up on a list like this. Like, you've got rookies. You've got a couple of rookies. There's no way a rookie's going to make this list. Oluwatimi. You've got Anthony Bradford, guys who either didn't play hardly at all last year or didn't play that well last year. You wouldn't expect them to make the list. So, yeah, nothing in the top 10, nothing in the honorable mentions, and nothing in the also receiving votes category. So this is almost like the Seahawks aren't eligible for this position because they don't really have anybody who could even apply. Like, you need not apply as an interior offensive lineman on the Seahawks right now because you either haven't done anything or you've done very, very little. So that's an easy one. Now, offensive tackle, on the other hand, that's a little more interesting. We do have some stuff happening at the tackle position. It was ugly last year, but that's mostly because of injury. Trent Williams, Penny Sewell, Laramie Tunzel, Wirfs, Lane Johnson, Darisaw, Maitaya, Andrew Thomas, Rashawn Slater, Ronnie Staley. So no Seahawks in the top 10. Tyron Smith, Dion Dawkins, Teron Armstead, Colton Miller, Taylor Decker is followed by Charles Cross. So yes, there is a Seahawk here. It's Charles Cross, a guy who some people are being a little hard on right now in this fan base, which I don't totally get given his youth and the injury he played through last year. So a little bit of love for Charles Cross. Again, not a lot. Like, you've got your top 10 and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that would make him barely above average among left tackles in the league because some of the guys in this list are right tackles. It is interesting because I know that most people, and I think correctly, would say that Abe Lucas has been a much better player than Charles Cross. But obviously, there's the injury factor, which probably is why you don't see Abe Lucas here. But I do think this is good to kind of emphasize the fact that Cross is a good player, and I think people are bailing on him a little too quickly here. I think that people are being a little too hard on a guy who is that young, who is working through some of the things that he's working through. I don't think anybody should be surprised that he hasn't been a Pro Bowl caliber player yet. The circumstances haven't allowed it. But yeah, we got Charles Cross here. Abe Lucas would probably be here if not for the injury stuff, but really hard to put him here when he's dealing with that. All right, quarterback. This is the big one, and they decided to just kind of pack it in near the end, but not at the end. So, again, there wasn't really much rhyme or reason to the order here. But, yeah, you got Mahomes, you got Burrow, you got Allen. I agree with that top three, by the way. That would be my top three as well. You got Lamar, you got Stafford, you got Herbert, you got Stroud, you got Aaron Rodgers, you got Jared Goff, and then you have Dak Prescott. Definitely not my list, by the way. That would not be my list, even if I think they got the top three well. But no Geno Smith. Honorable mentions, you got Brock Purdy, you got Jordan Love, you got Jalen Hurts, you got Tua, Kirk Cousins, you got Trevor Lawrence, and then receiving votes is Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. So the implication, and I understand that an aggregate doesn't necessarily work like this, is that Geno Smith is not even a top 20 quarterback in the league, I think, because you had the top 10, and then you've got 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I guess he could be 19th. I imagine that if ESPN wanted to turn this into an actual full list, they'd probably put him right there. So if this list is to be taken on face value, the implication is that Geno Smith is the 19th best quarterback in the league. And I'm going to say it again. If Geno Smith is that lackluster of a quarterback, like below average as a starter, then how did we manage to have 2 9-win seasons over the last 2 years with him as the quarterback when so much other stuff on this team doesn't really work at all. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute. You guys know how I feel about this, but I think this is absurd. Baker Mayfield has had one good season. Baker Mayfield's had one good season in the NFL now, and he's getting a vote before Geno Smith. Kyler Murray, who knows what he is right now, and he's getting a vote. I know the Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers thing is weird because they're coming off major injuries. But even someone like Tua, I don't see how Tua is supposed to be better than Geno. I don't. I think that if anything right now, people should be very down on Tua, very much wondering if he's a legitimate quarterback. So, yeah, I think this is absurd. I think Geno is a top 10 quarterback, but if he's not, he should be very close. Like, I don't understand what the difference is supposed to be between a guy like Geno Smith and a guy like Jordan Love. The only difference is they're younger, right? They're younger. You're more excited about them. They have upside. They could get a lot better than they currently are. But that doesn't mean they're better than him right now. So, yeah, I'm not buying that at all. I think that's a joke. Moving on to off-ball linebacker, and I don't think I'm going to shock anybody when I say that there are no Seahawks on the off-ball linebacker list. Not a single one. We do have Bobby Wagner as an honorable mention. He's obviously over in Washington, and Jordan Brooks made honorable mention. So we got a little bit of familiar faces here, but nothing on the current team. So that's what happens when you clean house a little bit. And I know we didn't clean house because those players were both free agents and they walked, but that's what happens when you let your guys go and you bring in other guys that are kind of not highly valued across the league, which, hey, I'm down with it. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Linebacker doesn't matter as much as it used to. It's a good position to go cheap at. Wide receiver. Very, very competitive position for sure. JJ, Tyreek, Jamar, Chase, good top three. CeeDee Lamb, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra, Mike Evans, Diggs, Ayuk is your top 10. No Seahawks. Honorable mentions, Kupp, Debo, Garrett, Jalen, Waddle, Devonta Smith, Nico Collins, Amari Cooper, DJ Moore. No Seahawks. Got to go all the way down to receiving votes to see DK Metcalf. And I'm of two minds here. In terms of DK Metcalf's talent, I definitely think that he could be, what would this be approximately, like top 20? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So this is implying that DK's the 19th best receiver in football, so that is top 20. So I think that's probably a reasonable judge of his production because he hasn't had that monster season in a bit. But I also think that this list is probably ignoring some of the extracurricular things with him, and I know people are going to make a joke about that, but in terms of like drawing double teams and drawing defensive attention, I do feel like DK Metcalf is better or more appealing to have than many of the guys on this list. But it's kind of like K9, I guess. He's got to do it. He's got to have that one season where he just goes off and has like 1,300 yards, and it may not happen in this offense, or he needs to be part of an elite offense. Now, that could happen in this offense for sure, but the production hasn't quite gotten to the point where it makes sense to look at him through that lens. So I get it, but at the same time, if you were asking me, would I rather have DK Metcalf or anybody in this honorable mention list? The only guy who I might take would be Garrett Wilson, because I do think Garrett Wilson is very much ascendant. And depending on how Cooper Kupp comes back from the injuries he's had over the last couple years, maybe him. But, yeah, I get it, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but I see it. And I know that's all kind of confusing, but I think you guys get me. The DK stuff's a little bit complicated. It goes beyond just the raw production with him. Okay. Final position that ESPN has done for us, ranking cornerbacks. And you guys might notice something. There was not one single Seahawk in the top 10 at any position so far. Not one. I think there should have been a couple, but the fact remains that there wasn't. So you're sitting there waiting for somebody to show up, and guess who comes through? Devin Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon, 9th ranked corner on this list. Witherspoon wasted little time becoming a top player in the competitive NFC West. Seattle deployed him in a variety of ways, from instinctive cover man to effective blitzer. Witherspoon is a baller, and AFC scouts said he's the most physical corner in the NFL, and he's hyper-competitive. Witherspoon's play earned him a Pro Bowl nod and a 4th-place finish in the Defensive Rookie of the Year race. So we got one. We got one. It's not a massive one. It's number 9. He barely made it. Came in just above Derek Stingley, and then you've got your honorable mentions here. And we're not done yet, by the way. Riq Woolen did receive votes. And this is the thing that I don't want people to forget when you're talking about Riq Woolen. I know that last year was rough. I wasn't happy about the way he played last year, but he continued to cover at a very high level. And I still feel like if we need to try to find a way to make it work with him, because what he brings to the table just naturally is too good to throw away. All right, that's everything. See you guys later. Let me know what you think down below. That's what ESPN thinks of our roster. It's not high praise, but they got something to prove now, I guess. I don't know if they're going to see this article and take anything out of it, but they got something to prove now, I suppose. All right, see you guys later. This video's been long, but I wanted to cover the whole thing in one swoop. See you guys later.